sex workers at Reddit. What is the saddest request story you have with a client? I have a client who gives me an allowance just to go and see his mom. Absolutely nothing else at all. I just have lunch or dinner with her a few times a week. Hang out and talk. She doesn't live alone. He's got a whole staff to care for her, but she gets lonely. Honestly, if he'd stop giving me the allowance, I probably wouldn't stop coming. It makes me kinda sad when I think that this dude can afford to spend a lump sum on me but can't afford to lose a day of work to see his mom. I had a client who was a newbie. He booked me for a dinner date. During dinner, he started crying. He broke down and told me he had just gone through a terrible divorce. It sounded like he still loved her, but she was already engaged to her new man. I ended up seeing this client regularly and things devolved. The ex-wife took the kids out of state. The kids wanted their cats, so he gave them up too. Both his parents were dead. No siblings. He stopped seeing me for a while when he got a new girlfriend. She ended up using him for his money. The last time I saw him, he said he was thinking of moving to Mexico. He wanted to get away. I didn't hear from him and life became busy for me. A few years later, I thought of him randomly and looked him up. I found his obituary and it was a few weeks after the last time I saw him. I think he killed himself and I really feel terrible about it. 3 guys hiring 3 girls to celebrate the birth of one of the men's first son. Wife was still in hospital. The young man who came into a rural Australia brothel I was working in. He didn't want sex. He just wanted someone to hold him and touch him. For 2 hours. He barely spoke. But he did tell me his story. He lived on a large station. I'm talking around 10,000 kilometers squared. His parents lived in the farmhouse at the front of the property. And he lived at the other end of the property in a smaller house on his own. Like most farmers. He worked dawn till dusk most days. He rarely spoke to other humans. And he didn't have time to go out and meet women. I felt sad for him. Because this was his life. I had a regular who was an older gentleman. Yes, we did do some deeds. But 95% of the time he just wanted company. I'd go with him grocery shopping. Out to eat. To his apartment to cuddle and watch movies. He'd tell me stories about his family that had passed. Stories from when he was a kid. Stuff he learned when he got his pilot's license. I was at his funeral when he passed. I'll never forget such a sweet lonely man who just wanted human companionship. Sad that most of the stories are just dudes needing a place to talk cry. It was in South Korea. Someone requested me to come in the middle of the night for a very high rate. Arrived there, the guy finally just wanted to take a rest on my knees. I was a sex worker like you. Until I took a sad guy in the knee. I won't share any specifics. But I've often experienced clients opening up about their past traumas. Sometimes there is tears. Always hugs. It's sad. But I'm happy to be there for them in the limited way that I can. I had a wheelchair-bound man request that I degrade him by using his disability as a trigger point for the act. They just wanted a hug. Stripper Heroon copyright airing. Had a young, attractive, wealthy guy take me to VIP for an hour just to listen to Bruce Springsteen songs. He just sat back, closed his eyes and sang along to every word. He told me when he was a kid he grew up in a really oppressive household where his likes and interests were discouraged and totally disregarded. He listened to Bruce and his lyrics gave him the hope and strength to eventually run away as a teenager. Since then he'd had so much success and joy, but he just really wanted to share his story and the music he loved with somebody that night. Not one, but my fiance's sister is. She has one client that pays her to just 50-yard field goal. Kick the shit out of his nuts. The saddest story about a client is probably when I lost my absolute favorite long-term regular to COVID. He was an adorably sweet old man. And I was very broken up about it. As an aside, you all know our Ask an Escort exists, right? An elderly man would come in whenever he'd saved enough money to afford an hour or two. He didn't speak much but always had the kindest smile for me. All he wanted to do was to hold me in his arms and sway gently to the music. Nothing else. After a couple of months he shared with me that he used to do this with his wife before she died and that he misses the intimacy of their moments together. At some point he stopped coming. I don't know what happened to him but I will never forget him. No one story in particular. But there is an overwhelming amount of sad, broken and angry men out there. I found sheer the frequency horribly sad because it seems that so many men are struggling out there and feeling trapped and alone and unable to find or ask for support. Messy divorces. Limited child custody. Loveless marriages. Financial pressure. Burnout at work. Family and societal expectations to live up to. The list is endless. Also, a surprising amount of perfectly nice normal guys who had a lot of shame and disgust about their own body and image. Women seem more associated with body positivity movements and such. But so many men have devastating hurt about their body and things they cannot change about it. I'm grateful to have seen the vulnerable side of so many men and I am deeply empathetic to the plight of men and their often invisible challenges. Please check in with the men in your life. They may not be okay. Open bracket. And thank you for my hugs. Haven't had any particularly sad stories. But this one customer just kept on sharing intimate details about his relationship and the lack of sex in said relationship. I'm fine with that. TBH. I'm genuinely interested in dating and relationship stories. And I'm happy to give advice or my honest opinion if wanted. Don't mind me just wondering if I should hire a sex worker to hug me because no one else will. A call from a shouting woman with a crying child heard in the background. She shouted, "Do you work with 5-year-old kids?" Not sure what she wanted me to do with that kid. But I didn't feel like continuing the discussion and it was really creepy. I bet it would go like, "I'll do anything you want for $150 an hour." Perfect. Here's my kid and $900. I just need to sleep. I'm not a sex worker but I'm a medical student. While on GP rotation we would go see this bedbound man who was super obese, BMI 70, basically on his deathbed. One day we go to see him and we see a couple young women walking out before we get there. When we asked him who they were he was very candid. He wanted one last blowjob before he died and he needed two because one of them had to hold his fat up. Next week the horny bastard said he'd called them back another 3 times. Not the saddest but it's something that's just stuck with me. Every time these threads pop up, I get an urge to start working as a cuddle WHRE. Or whatever you'd call that. No judgment. No expectations. I'll just be there to hug you. Stroke your hair, listen to your stories, and give you a goodbye kiss when I leave again. I love hugging and cuddling, and making people feel safe. Kept happening with drunk strangers pre-COVID. Might as well get paid for it, I guess. When I was working as a stripper, I had a customer, mid-late 40s. Reasonably attractive dude in business clothes at first glance. Pay for a private room only to begin taking their clothes off. It turned out that this person was questioning their gender. Underneath their male clothes they had taken to wearing a bra, panties, etc. It wasn't a fetish thing, but an identity thing. They had a wife, at least, and told me the wife had no idea. No one knew. And basically the situation was just eating them up inside and they wanted to chat to someone about it. We spent the time they paid for hanging out and talking about fashion. Someone told me they wish I was their best friend. One line. One hard punch in the sentiments. I consider sex workers related to the concept of loneliness therapy. We have people to help almost all human conditions. But no one has the designated job of loneliness reducer. But that's what sex workers also are. My time to shine. This has been posted before but it's the only thing I have to contribute. So this strip I used to manage had this regular who would come in once a month. Roughly. He tipped well. Kept to himself and was polite enough. Every time he came in though he brought this old school lace nightie which he would get the girls to wear and dance in. He tipped them lavishly as well as paid their hourly rate. Whatever drinks they wanted etc etc. It wasn't until the second or third time I finally asked one of the girls what the deal was with the bio lingerie and she told me that it was his dead grandmother's nightie. So there you have it. People using escorts as therapists. There was a man who hired me and took me to dinner. We went to an expensive restaurant that he presumably had to save up for. The entire time he just stared at me and didn't eat his food. By the time we got to the hotel he just immediately wanted to have sex without conversing much. I assumed he was a little on the shy side. So I proceeded to ask him what he liked and what not. He then tells me to get on all fours and bark like a seal. I left soon after. Guess you didn't. Seal the deal. I have a guy who sees me often to just talk about his life. Really good looking early 30s guy. I've seen him 4 times now. I've never had sex, just kinda cuddles. Talked and watched movies. I was hired by a middle-aged woman who just want companion for the evening and night. She was a beautiful woman who I didn't understand why she hired me, but I met her at the bar, asked her name and she gave me her card and told me to treat her and my name was Bill. So I brought her drinks and paid for her meal. We went to watch a movie, I think it was Molly's Game, I can't remember. Then we took an Uber back to hers and we spent the night. I only found out why she does this by talking after we spent the night. Her husband and son died about 4 years ago and she likes pretending when she's having a bad day that she goes on a date with someone that reminds her of her husband. People often think that it's about sex, sometimes it's not about the sex, it's about the companionship and the feeling of reliving past moment or even just ignoring emotions at the time. I'm an online SW, meaning no IRL clients, and I think for me the saddest part is the amount of people that are basically totally isolated and reaching out for any sort of connection with another human. COVID has taken a real emotional and social toll on people and it sucks to see. Not my story. But this has been posted before. The top comment last time this was posted was some old guy. He had cooked dinner for 2 and it was his dead wife's favorite meal, so he just wanted someone to enjoy it with. How would one find an escort to do such things? Online SW here. I don't know so much as sad. But I do a lot of fetish stuff, semi-weird fetishes too. Tongue, burping, wedgies, feet, hiccups, farts, etc. And to me I feel a little sad when guys say that they can't open up about their fetishes in real life or could never find a partner willing to do them. Also, once in a private session, video to video, one guy told me to call his cock small and disgusting, small penis humiliation. But his cock was ducking huge. Then he also asked me to be racist to him. He's black. I'm white, and I had to immediately stop and say no, sorry, I can't do that. He said that it was fine and to just keep calling him small and disgusting instead, again. The dude was physically fit and huge. Not a sex worker, but my mom used to be a manager at a bar strip club. It was also a sex shop. She had a customer who was morbidly obese and didn't clean himself. His first time with a girl, she ran off because his underwear had a layer of ST and PSS. He also wanted a refund. He comes back again. This time as a pretend girlfriend so he can show up his younger brother. Ducking Christ, my wife better not die before me. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Wrote Henry David Thoreau. So purchase time with a sex worker and share your feelings and cuddle. He might have added. I have a friend who is paid handsomely to eat French fries and listen to this dude's stories. I wish the lawmakers would read this thread. Put on their big girl panties. And decriminalize. Till people hire sex workers as therapists. The saddest for me was the older Greek Orthodox dude. Tough tradie type with a family who are regular mostly to live vicariously through his trans women he was seeing. They desperately wanted to transition, but between their body and their family responsibilities they knew they wouldn't ever be able to. Nice person. Very sad situation. I guess the dude who got a micronist due to complications with his diabetes was one too. He was pretty bummed about that. I don't remember many sad stories though, tbh. Plenty of run-of-the-mill lonely people, sure. And the sob stories of daily life under capitalism. The worst stuff was usually shitty that had happened to my co-workers. I don't think there are that many of sex workers here. It's working hours for sex workers. Time zones don't exist at all. There is only one country on earth. I don't know where you live that it's both peak prostitute hour and sex workers all conform to a set, rigid schedule without breaks or days off. Well, the world has 24 time zones, you know. It like people repost this question every week. It like people repost this every question every week. Damn. I'm really sorry, I'd never noticed. I just saw a post about someone with a sad experience and wanted to know if there are any such stories. Not a sex worker. However, someone I knew hired a sex worker for his brother who was dying and bedridden from MS. The brother was barely capable of speaking and could only move one of his arms. The sex worker gave him a blowjob with the catheter still inserted. I had a guy who was seeing me for a little bit. I had quit seeing him after a couple sessions because he was basically assuming that it was going to work out like Pretty Woman. I was also new to sex working at the time. I didn't really know how to effectively communicate other than just to cut it off. He was devastated. Well, there was this very lonely, awkward, unlikable congressman from Florida. Damn, so sad how most guys are just looking for a hug. Yeah, that's me pretty much. I'm awkward. Can't talk to strangers, especially women that I would like to get to know. I'm not the worker, but I knew someone who started selling feet pic over quarantine. She had garnered a gathering of feet simps. She was talking about how hilarious they were, and in one someone gave her $10 and she replied, "Is that all?" He then gave $20. He also included an apology which was so hilarious she had to share it with me. It was him, fully nude on all fours, talking about how he didn't deserve feet as good as hers. What was sad about it is I knew the person that was simping and he was in a relationship with a good friend of mine. Worse, he had a history of cheating. They are broken up now, thank God. She was too nice to him. But now, when I think about him, I think about him on all fours saying he's not good enough for feet. Your friend sounds like a pretty shitty person. She's making money off of a consensual transaction and subsequently sharing private info pictures with her friends with the intent of kink shaming the people who are buying her services. Her behavior is part of what stigmatizes sex work and puts other sex workers in danger. I told her I had a bad stomach with diarrhea. Her eyes light up and say, "Can you give me a hot Carl?"